Welcome to the Steampunk Years, Volume 2. Thank you for watching. Now let's dive back into the story. Chapter 18, The Weight of Expectation. A knock at the door. Sharp, impatient. Thornwell didn't look up. "Come in!" The door swung open, and Mr. Halstead entered. One of the key investors. A man of stiff posture, silver-threaded hair, and a gaze as cold as tempered steel. "You're cutting it close, Thornwell." Thornwell smoothed his notes, adjusting his spectacles. "Genius takes time." Halstead stepped further inside, his shadow stretching over the desk. "Your genius has cost us a fortune, and my patience is not infinite." Thornwell barely resisted the urge to scoff. These men knew nothing of vision. They saw numbers, profit margins, control. They wanted the machine because it was power incarnate, but they would never understand what it meant. Still, he offered a placating nod. "We remain on schedule." Halstead studied him for a long moment. "Your assistant Silas." Thornwell's brow lifted. "What about him?" "He's reckless." Halstead folded his arms. "If he becomes a liability, I expect you to deal with it." Thornwell went still. The words were casual, but the meaning was not. Silas was the only one capable of navigating the realms. He had an instinct for it, a talent even Thornwell didn't fully understand. But these men, they only saw pieces on a board, and they would sacrifice any piece that ceased to be useful. "I assure you," Thornwell said carefully, "Silas remains an asset." Halstead's expression didn't change. For now, a pause. The air between them felt heavier than it should. Then Halstead stepped back toward the door. "Tomorrow night," he said, "everything must be in place." And then he was gone. Thornwell exhaled slowly, his grip tightening on the edge of the desk. They were closing in. He turned toward the machine, studying its intricate layers. He had given everything to this creation, his time, his reputation, his mind. But he was no fool. Once the machine proved its worth, once the investors had what they wanted, he would become expendable, just like Silas, just like everyone else. The only question was who would make the first move. As if in response, the machine clicked, a soft, deliberate sound, like something deep within was waking up. Thornwell swallowed. For the first time in years, a sliver of doubt crept into his mind. Had he built something he could no longer control? Chapter 19, The Investors' Circle. A shadowed meeting of wealth, power, and the occult. The meeting was not held in a boardroom. It was not conducted in the lavish halls of government, nor within the smoke-stacked towers where industrial titans counted their fortunes. No, men like these did not meet where the world could see them. They met below, beneath the city's skin, beyond the streets of industry and commerce, in the hidden veins where power truly flowed. Here, within a chamber lined with brass filigree and obsidian stone, the air was thick with heat, smoke, and the lingering scent of burning incense. At its center, a long, polished table stretched beneath the dim glow of gas lamps, their light flickering against the high, vaulted ceiling. At the head of this table sat Mr. Halstead. Around him the others, the high financiers, men whose fortunes built cities and burned nations. The military architects, generals, and strategists who never dirtied their hands in war, yet dictated its every turn. The occult advisors, cloaked figures with faces hidden in shadow, their presence an unsettling counterbalance to the suits and uniforms that surrounded them. The machine was not just an invention, it was a threshold, and they intended to control what lay beyond it. The meeting begins. Halstead spoke first. "Thornwell is nearly finished. The activation begins tomorrow night." There was no celebration, no applause, only the measured nods of men who expected their plans to unfold as designed. "Has he become suspicious?" asked Lord Barrington, his voice like silk laced with steel. Halstead exhaled slowly. "He knows the machine is beyond his understanding, but he still believes he is the one leading this endeavor." A low chuckle came from one of the occult advisors, a robed figure known only as the alchemist. "Then he remains useful, for now." Halstead tapped a finger against the table. "And if he ceases to be?" The military architect, a man with a rigid jaw and cold, unblinking eyes, leaned forward. "Then he is no different from any other failed experiment, and we discard what is broken." A murmur of approval rippled through the room. They were not discussing the fate of a man. They were discussing a tool, and what to do when it ceased to serve its purpose. But Thornwell was only one variable. Halstead shifted in his chair. And Silas? The silence that followed was different. He was not like Thornwell. Thornwell was replaceable. Silas was something else entirely. "It would be unwise to remove him prematurely," the alchemist murmured, folding his gloved hands before him. "He is the only one capable of traversing the realms with precision." "That can change," Barrington said softly. "All things can change." A woman's voice cut through the room, smooth, assured, but with an undercurrent of something unnatural. The machine does not just turn gears. The room went still. The speaker, Madame Ashmore, sat at the far end of the table, her hands resting over the symbol etched into the mahogany. A sigil older than any of the men here, a mark of something beyond their wealth and power. The fractures are not a byproduct, she continued. They are the purpose. The key is not meant to contain, it is meant to release. Halstead's jaw tightened. We have agreed to our interests. We want control over the realms. You and your order want... Ashmore's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. Revelation. Halstead did not like dealing with these people. They spoke in riddles, in half-truths and prophecies, and yet he needed them. The machine was not just a machine. What lay beyond it was alive. And if the investors were the masters of industry, the occultists were the gatekeepers of things that industry alone could not grasp. Halstead exhaled, folding his hands. Very well, he said. Thornwell will complete his work. Silas remains, for now. His gaze flickered toward Madame Ashmore. And should the key turn? She smiled. It was not a comforting sight. Then the old world wakes. The lamps flickered violently just for a moment. The meeting ended, and above them the machine stirred. Chapter 20, the night before. The last light of twilight faded through the window, casting long shadows across the dimly lit apartment. Silas sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, his breathing slow and steady. The room around him was quiet, sparse but lived in. Stacks of worn-out books lined the shelves, brass trinkets rested on the desk, and scattered notes filled the spaces in between. It was a place suspended between worlds, much like the man who lived there. In his mind, Silas drifted elsewhere, a realm of stillness and soft light, a sanctuary carved out within himself, a place untouched by the weight of expectation, of fractured realities, of things lurking just out of sight. Then, a soft click broke the silence. Footsteps, light and measured, approached from behind. What are you thinking of? Silas opened his eyes, turning his head slightly. Eliza stood at the threshold, her presence as effortless as ever. The warm glow of the streetlights outside cast a soft outline around her frame, turning her expression unreadable. She looked both out of place and perfectly at home in his apartment, as if she had always belonged there. A comfortable place, Silas murmured, rising to his feet. A place I find beautiful. A slow, knowing smile curved across Eliza's lips. She tilted her head, studying him as if she had just uncovered something interesting, something unspoken. Come with me, she said, her voice light, almost teasing. I'll show you an amazing place. Silas hesitated. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the shift in the air, the way the moment felt delicate, like stepping too hard might shatter it. But there was something in the way she said it, something that made him forget, for just a moment, the weight pressing down on his shoulders. So he followed. Hours passed. The moon sat high in the night sky, its glow filtering through the thin curtains, spilling pale silver light across the wooden floor. The apartment was still. So still that the faint ticking of a clock on the far wall became the loudest sound. Silas lay on the bed, deep in sleep, his breathing steady and untroubled. Eliza sat in a chair beside him. She hadn't moved for over 2 hours, hadn't shifted, hadn't looked away. Her robe hung loosely over her shoulders, but she paid no mind to the chill that had settled into the room. Her posture was unnaturally still, like a statue. Her gaze fixed on Silas with an intensity that wasn't quite curiosity nor concern. At precisely 2:01 a.m., she lifted her right hand. The movement was slow, deliberate. She framed Silas's head between her thumb and index finger, tilting her head as if measuring something unseen. Her eyes narrowed, tracking the space he occupied. Not him exactly, but the shape of him, the way he fit into this moment. 15 seconds passed. Then, just as carefully, she lowered her arm. She did not exhale, she did not blink. Instead, she simply sat there, her gaze distant, unfocused. A 1,000-mile stare, a look that did not see the room, nor the man sleeping within it, but something far beyond. Silas stirred in his sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Eliza didn't react. She only continued her silent vigil, watching, thinking, untouched by the passing of time. As the night deepened, the apartment seemed to hold its breath, caught in the fragile moment between what had passed and what was about to unfold. Chapter 21. The Activation. Silas woke to the distant grumble of thunder. For a moment he lingered between sleep and wakefulness, the quiet haze of dreams still clinging to the edges of his mind. The air in the room was cool, the sheets beside him undisturbed. The absence was immediate. He turned his head, half expecting a note, a trace of warmth, something, but there was nothing. Only the faintest wisp of her perfume already fading. Of course she was gone. Silas exhaled and ran a hand over his face before pushing himself upright. Outside, the storm pressed against the city, thick clouds rolling in to blot out the early morning light. The air was heavy, charged, as though something unseen was gathering, waiting for its moment. Tonight was the night. The machine would activate, and something told him that after tonight nothing would be the same. The Grand Assembly Hall loomed over the city, its polished stone and gleaming brass fixtures reflecting the candlelight. Inside, the air buzzed with a quiet sort of power, the murmur of hushed conversations behind crystal glasses of brandy, the knowing glances exchanged between men who considered themselves the architects of the future. Tycoons, military officials, investors. At the heart of it all stood the machine, a monolithic labyrinth of brass and steel, its gears polished to an unnatural sheen. Tubes and piping wove through its structure like veins in a living thing, humming faintly as if the metal itself was waiting to breathe. Years of work had led to this moment, years of research, of stolen knowledge from the realms beyond. And tonight it would be switched on. Silas adjusted his collar, the stiff fabric of his formal coat suffocating against his skin. He had attended these gatherings before, had listened to these men sip their expensive liquor and congratulate themselves on forces they could barely comprehend. But then the hush. A ripple passed through the crowd. Heads turned. A carriage had arrived outside. Silas didn't need to look to know who it was, Madame Ashmore. The carriage was black, unmarked, sleek. 2 figures stepped out first, her attendants. One was tall and angular, his coat lined with crimson embroidery, his vulture-like features sharp as a knife. The other, stocky and built like a fortress, wore a military-style jacket far too ornate for mere security. Silas caught whispers behind him. God, the theatrics. Think she spent more on the coat than the machine? I give it 3 minutes before she starts talking about the nature of power. Then she emerged, Madame Ashmore. She moved with the kind of presence that silenced a room without a word. Regal in her mid-60s, untouchable in a flowing black ensemble, tailored to perfection. Dark sunglasses rested on the bridge of her nose, despite the dim light. A walking cane, more an accessory than a necessity, tapped softly against the marble floor. A single silver-streaked curl had fallen loose at her temple, perfectly intentional. She did not acknowledge the whispers. She did not acknowledge Halstead. She simply arrived. Halstead, ever the polished diplomat, stepped forward to greet her with a nod. Madame Ashmore, punctual as always. A pause, a slight tilt of her head, then smooth as silk. Of course, Professor Thornwell took the stage, his eyes bright with barely contained excitement. He launched into a speech, one about progress, about power, about the machine's place in shaping the world to come. Silas barely listened. His gaze drifted to the windows instead, watching the sky churn. The storm had grown worse. The wind howled through the narrow streets, rattling lanterns and banners outside. Rain splattered against the glass in thick, heavy drops. The distant flicker of lightning illuminated the skyline for brief, electric moments, the outlines of spires and towers vanishing into the dark soon after. Inside, Thornwell's voice rose in triumph. The investors leaned forward, eager. The machine stood at the center of it all, polished gears reflecting the glow of the chandeliers above. Then the moment came. The key was placed. The gears locked into position. The machine shuddered. A low hum rolled through the hall, deep and resonant, sinking into the bones of those who stood closest. Outside, the storm surged. A gust of wind struck the windows with such force that the glass trembled in its frame. The rain came harder now, hammering against the city with unnatural intensity. Another flash of lightning licked the sky, illuminating the clouds as they coiled and twisted, as though something within them was writhing to break free. Silas stiffened. Something was wrong. The air bent, just slightly, a shimmer like heat rippling from a forge. The gaslights flickered. Shadows stretched in ways they shouldn't. And for a heartbeat, the brass panels reflected something that was not there. His pulse quickened. Had anyone else noticed? Then it was gone. The machine stabilized. The hum softened. But the storm did not. A bolt of lightning struck somewhere close, a searing white flash that momentarily drowned the hall in stark illumination. Thunder followed, loud, immediate, shaking the very foundation of the building. A few startled murmurs rippled through the crowd, but Thornwell carried on, undeterred. Scattered applause followed as the businessmen clapped, satisfied. Halstead exchanged pleased glances with the military officials. Thornwell stood at the center of it all, looking like a man who had touched the divine. "Silas?" He felt sick. "Madame Ashmore?" She simply smiled. Another tremor of thunder rolled through the city. The activation was complete, and somewhere unseen the fractures had begun. Chapter 22. The Follower's Warning. The city was alive, but something was wrong. Silas had walked these streets 1,000 times before, memorized the rhythm of their movements, the pulse of steam and brass that wove through the heart of the city. But today, everything felt offbeat. The steam vents hissed too loudly, their release more like whispers than pressure valves. The brass piping that lined the buildings groaned, not with the usual settling of metal, but as if something unseen pressed against it. Even the sky carried weight. The storm had passed, yet its remnants clung stubbornly to the rooftops. Dark clouds streaked across the morning like smudges of ink. The air was thick, charged, listening. People murmured as they passed. "Never seen a storm like that." "It was unnatural, I swear. Something's going on." Silas kept walking, kept his head down. He didn't want to think about it. Didn't want to remember the way the air had bent when the machine had come to life, or how the gas lights had flickered, casting shadows that stretched in directions they shouldn't. Then someone stepped in front of him, a man in simple robes. Silas recognized him immediately. Days ago, he had seen the same man in the marketplace when he and Eliza passed through, a follower of the prophet. The man's eyes gleamed, not with fervor, but with expectation, like he had been waiting. "You walk among the cracks now, traveler." Silas exhaled sharply. "Not in the mood for riddles." "It is not a riddle. It is a truth." The man's voice was calm, measured. "The world split last night, and you stood at the fault line." Silas clenched his jaw. "Right. And I suppose you're here to tell me I'm doomed?" The follower's lips curled slightly. "No. Doomed is what you become when you ignore the warnings." A gust of wind cut through the street sharp as a blade. Loose papers lifted from the ground, spiraling unnaturally. The steam from the vents curled in delicate, deliberate motions, like something watching. Silas's stomach tightened. The air was thick with the same pressure as last night. The follower stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. "The machine has stirred something, and it will not stop." Silas's voice was flat. "Machines don't stir things, they run. That's it." The follower studied him, his expression softening, not in pity but in understanding. "Machines run, but they do not hum, they do not breathe." A cold flicker crawled up Silas's spine. The man straightened, observing him, not with fear but something stranger. Recognition. "You were meant to see this." Silas scowled. "See what?" The follower took a step back. The unraveling, and then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd, vanishing as though he had never been there at all. Silas stood rooted, heart hammering against his ribs. A gear somewhere in the city shrieked, grinding unnaturally against its housing. The steam vent nearest him stopped, the hiss cutting off so suddenly it left a void in the air. Then, an eerie exhale, slow and deliberate. Further down the street, a woman turned abruptly, scanning the crowd as if she had heard her name whispered. Except no one had spoken. The fractures had begun, and whether he wanted to admit it or not, Silas was standing right in the middle of them. Chapter 23. A Familiar Voice. Silas needed quiet. The prophet's follower had vanished into the crowd, but his words remained. They settled in the spaces between Silas's thoughts, digging in like hooks. He needed something normal, something real, so he went for tea. The shop was small, tucked away in a narrow alley, a place he had only visited once before. Muted colors, warm lighting, the gentle clink of porcelain against wood. The scent of steeping leaves and honey, solid, tangible, in a world that suddenly felt like shifting sand. Silas ran a hand over his face and exhaled slowly. His tea sat untouched, the warmth fading as his mind churned. "The world split last night, and you stood at the fault line." The words replayed like an echo that refused to die. Then, a whisper of silk, a presence behind him, and her voice. "Let the sunlight shine, my dearest dear." Silas stiffened. He knew that voice. Before he could turn, Eliza slid into the seat across from him. Effortless, uninvited, completely expected, a warm smile across her face. She looked at him the way someone might look at a puzzle with one piece missing. "You look troubled." She tilted her head, studying him. Silas exhaled dryly. "You always sneak up on people like that?" Eliza smirked, sipping from her own cup as if she had been there the whole time. "Only the interesting ones." Silas leaned back, watching her. She looked completely at ease, as if the world hadn't shifted. as if she hadn't vanished from his bed the night before. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he admitted. "You wound me," Eliza grinned. "I told you I'm always around." He raised a brow. "That what you do? Appear and disappear?" A soft laugh, fingers tapping idly against her cup. "Something like that." Silas studied her. Impossible to read, too relaxed, too in control. Had she felt it last night? The shift? The moment when reality bent? Or was she just that good at pretending? "You hear about the storm?" His voice was measured. "Hard to miss." Eliza swirled the tea in her cup. "People are talking." "Yeah." Silas held her gaze. "They are." A pause. Eliza set her cup down, folding her hands neatly in front of her. "What is it you're not saying, Silas?" The question felt heavier than it should. His fingers curled around the porcelain of his cup. A part of him wanted to tell her about the follower, about the warning, about the way the air felt wrong. But another part, the part that had been trained to keep things to himself, that part won. Silas forced a smirk, leaning back. "Just wondering where you ran off to." Eliza smiled, but didn't answer. "Some mysteries are better left unsolved." A beat of silence. Then she tilted her head, as if assessing something just beneath his skin. "You ever think about leaving, Silas?" He blinked. "What?" Eliza's gaze didn't waver. "The city, the work, everything. Just walking away." Silas frowned. That was a dangerous question. Hadn't he thought about it? Leaving Thornwell, walking away before it was too late. But it was already too late, wasn't it? He scoffed lightly. "You make it sound easy." Eliza smirked. "Maybe it is." Outside, the storm had passed, but the air still carried the weight of something unseen. Silas watched Eliza as she took another sip of tea, her expression unreadable. Was she baiting him? Testing him? Or did she truly mean it? One thing was certain. She was never here by accident. Eliza set her cup down, smiling softly. "Let the sunlight shine, Silas." He studied her, voice quiet. "Yeah, we'll see." Chapter 24, A Day in the Square. Silas watched Eliza, searching for something. The question she had asked still lingered, unshaken by time. "You ever think about leaving?" And now, just as smoothly, she had pivoted. "Come with me to the square, it'll be good for you." Music, sunshine, vendors. The kind of day that felt easy. The kind of thing he hadn't made time for in years. He frowned. "You just want to spend the afternoon drinking cider and watching street performers?" Eliza grinned. "And you don't?" "Not usually." She tilted her head. "Maybe it's time for something different." A breeze stirred the air, warm and golden. The storm had passed, leaving behind a city that looked untouched, as if last night had never happened. Silas hesitated, but only for a second. He needed a distraction. So he went with her. The square was alive with movement. Laughter and music spilled through the streets, twining with the scent of roasting almonds and spiced cider. Sunlight flickered across worn cobblestones, the weight of the storm nothing but a forgotten dream. Children wove between the stalls, their pockets full of sugared candy and stolen moments. Performers juggled, musicians played, vendors called out their wares. Eliza moved through it effortlessly. She belonged here or anywhere. Silas, on the other hand, felt like an outsider. He always had. "Try this." She gestured toward a vendor's stand, a small pastry wrapped in paper. He raised a brow. "What is it?" Her smirk was almost playful. "Something sweet. Don't ask questions." Silas took a bite. Warm, flaky, honey-drizzled damn. It was good. Eliza watched, waiting. He chewed slowly, then sighed. "All right, fine, it's good." Eliza gasped in mock surprise. "Did you just admit to enjoying something?" For a while it was normal. Too normal. Then, a commotion near one of the vendor carts. An old man's voice raised, frantic. People turned, murmuring. Silas and Eliza exchanged glances. The old man clutched the vendor's arm, desperation lining his face. I swear it was right here." The vendor pulled away, annoyed. "Sir, you're mistaken." "No, no!" The old man's voice cracked. "The alley, it was right here!" Silas tensed. "Eliza?" She was watching. The old man spun, pointing to the spot where an alley should have been. Only there was nothing, just solid brick. Silas felt his stomach drop. The crowd dismissed it. A confused old man, a mistake. Nothing more. But Eliza? She simply took a slow sip of her cider, unreadable. "Strange things happen every day," she murmured. Silas's voice was quiet. "Not like that." Eliza's smile was small, knowing. "Don't they?" The square hummed with life, but Silas barely noticed. His mind was still tangled in the moment from minutes ago. The frantic old man, the vanishing alley, the way the world felt just a little too off. It wasn't much. A small thing, really. But it clung to him like the last note of a song that refused to fade. Then Eliza's voice, soft and concerned. Oh, I hope he gets the help he needs. Silas turned. She stood beside him, her expression one of mild sympathy, as if the whole thing had been nothing more than a regrettable scene in the middle of an otherwise lovely day. A lost old man, confused and rambling. Something sad, but not worth lingering on. Before he could answer, she took his hand, not forcefully, not even deliberately, just a light touch, a gentle pull. "Come on," she said, offering a small, knowing smile. "I want you to see the flowers." The flower stand was tucked into the far end of the market, nestled between a spice merchant's stall and a cart overflowing with handmade jewelry. Silas let himself be led, not because he wanted to see the flowers, but because Eliza made it easy. The air here was thick with the scent of jasmine and damp earth. Eliza moved through the display leisurely, her fingers trailing over delicate petals, brushing against stems and leaves as if she were considering each one carefully. Silas exhaled, running a hand through his hair. He still felt the weight of the moment back at the vendor's stall, the gap in the bricks where an alley should have been. But Eliza had already moved on. And then, so effortlessly it almost felt like an afterthought, she plucked a single bloom, a blue rose. Silas frowned. It was an unnatural color, too striking, too vivid against the soft pastels of the other flowers. Something about it felt almost surreal. Eliza turned, holding it between two fingers before pressing it into his palm. "For looking so blue today," she said, her voice warm, teasing. Silas stared at the flower, feeling the cool, velvety petals against his fingers. A joke, a small gesture, nothing more. For a second he almost laughed. Almost. He glanced up, meeting her eyes. She was watching him, not intensely, not prying, just watching, as if she was waiting to see how he would react. He smirked faintly, rolling the stem between his fingers. "Poetic." Eliza stepped closer, amusement flickering in her expression. "I have my moments." Just like that, the moment shifted. The missing alley, the frantic old man, the feeling that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong, gone, or at least buried beneath something easier to hold. Eliza had redirected the conversation flawlessly. No force, no argument, just a smooth, effortless pivot. And Silas let her, because right now it was easier that way. Chapter 25, Sky. The metallic hum of generators pulsed in the distance as Sky Vance strode through the base, the rhythmic click of her boots muffled by the ever-present murmur of conversation and machinery. Overhead, the sky was painted in the soft hues of dusk, the twin moons beginning their ascent, casting an eerie glow over the steel-plated corridors. She moved with purpose, precision, every step measured, every movement controlled. Around her, soldiers barked orders, engineers tinkered with soul-driven machinery, and the scent of burning fuel mixed with the crisp evening air. This world, orderly and structured, was the only place she had ever felt safe. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down at the glowing interface on her wrist. Mother. Sky hesitated. Her fingers hovered over the screen for just a second too long before she tapped to accept the call. The moment the line connected, she knew something was wrong. Her mother's breath was ragged, barely a whisper over the comm. "Sky?" A sharp gasp, a shuffling noise, the sound of something clattering to the ground. "Sky, I need you, please." Every muscle in Sky's body went rigid. "No." The word formed on instinct, an internal denial, a desperate wish that what she was hearing wasn't real. "Where is he?" Sky's voice was flat, controlled, though the soul energy swirling around her wavered, flickering with an agitation she couldn't suppress. A muffled sob crackled over the line, then the unmistakable sound of his voice, deep, slurred, filled with rage. "Who the hell are you calling, huh? Who?" The line cut out. Sky stopped walking. The noise of the bass faded into nothing. The voices, the machinery, the world. It all blurred in the periphery of her mind. Her fingers clenched into a fist so tight her knuckles turned white. Her father, drunk, again. For a moment, all she could do was stand there, heart pounding, memories clawing at the edges of her mind. She was a child again, curled in the corner of the kitchen, the sound of shattering glass. Her mother's voice, soft, begging. The way his shadow had loomed over them both. The soul lights around her pulsed violently. She forced herself to breathe. "This is not then. You are not helpless. You are not that girl anymore." Her thumb moved with swift precision, tapping into the military network. A direct call to local enforcers. "I need immediate deployment to—" she started, but then hesitation. Her mother had called her. Not the enforcers, her. And Sky knew why. This wasn't about justice. This wasn't about rules or intervention. Her mother was afraid, and after all these years, she still believed Sky was the only one who could save her. Sky exhaled slowly. Her gaze lifted, locking onto the horizon beyond the base's towering gates. She already knew what she had to do. She was going home. Chapter 26. The sound of breaking glass reached Sky before she even stepped inside. A yell, a crash. Then the door slammed open. There was no time to breathe, no time to prepare. Her soul energy flickered wildly, responding to the panic surging through her veins. Blue light pulsed at her fingertips, but it did nothing to stop the scene in front of her. Her mother was on the floor, curled up, trembling. The delicate floral dress she always wore was soaked through, clinging to her like a second skin. Sky couldn't tell if the dark stains were liquor or blood. Maybe both. Her father was a storm. Wild-eyed, slurring, rage spilling off him in waves as he swung blindly, his fist slamming into the wall. Another bottle hit the floor, shattered, like everything else in this house. And then he turned, their eyes met. Something broke inside Sky. This wasn't new. This wasn't unexpected. But that didn't make it any easier. Her breath came sharp and uneven. Her mother whimpered behind her. The glass crunched beneath her boots. Her father stumbled, snarled. A monster in their home. The sting registered a second too late. A thin, warm trickle slid down her cheek. A bottle. He had thrown a bottle. At her. Her father, her commanding officer, the man who had drilled discipline, control, and strength into her since childhood, had just thrown a bottle at her head. And all she had done was flinch. Something snapped. She wasn't sure what. It wasn't rage. It wasn't fury. It was something colder, sharper. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "Sit down." Not a plea, a command. For the first time, her father hesitated. The alcohol dulled his instincts. Or maybe it was something else. The shift in her tone. The first real crack of authority from her to him. Then he laughed. "You think you can order me around?" His smile was ugly, twisted by drink and cruelty. Shattered glass crunched beneath her boots as she took a step forward. The house stank of liquor, thick, bitter, overpowering. Her mother trembled, curling in on herself as Sky moved to shield her from whatever came next. "Always gotta play the hero, don't you, girl?" Sky stiffened. She knew that tone, knew it like a scar that never faded. Her hands twitched, clenched them, control. But her voice, her training, her discipline, everything she had built herself to be, it all crumbled the second he looked at her. "You're drunk," she said. Her voice wavered, weak. You need to stop. You need to—" "Shut your damn mouth." The words hit harder than any bottle ever could. Sky flinched. Just like that, she was a child again. Small, helpless, not a soldier, not a warrior, just his daughter. Her mother whimpered, trying to sit up, but her limbs wouldn't hold her. Sky dropped to her knees beside her, hands shaking as she checked for injuries, trying to do something, trying to be useful. Her father laughed, a low, ugly chuckle that scraped against her ears. "Look at you." She didn't need to look up. She could hear the sneer curling at the edges of his words. Big soldier girl, trained to fight, and yet here you are, crawling on the floor like a scared little girl. Her breath caught. Because he was right. She should stand up. She should take control. She should fight back. But her heart was hammering. Her hands were shaking. This is normal, she told herself. This is normal. But tonight she couldn't move. Sky didn't breathe. The sharp sting on her cheek was nothing compared to this. The weight of it. The shame of it. She pressed her fingers gently against her mother's arm, searching for something solid to ground herself. But the air was too thick, too full of liquor and shattered expectations. And then her father, still swaying, his voice thick with drink and something even fouler, scoffed. "I knew it." Sky barely registered the words. "I wish I had a damn son." It landed like a gut punch. Her mother flinched beneath her touch as if absorbing some of the pain meant for Sky. Sky shouldn't be shocked. She shouldn't feel the ice creeping up her spine. She had heard worse. But not this. Not confirmation. Not proof. A lifetime of trying. A lifetime of forcing herself into the mold of strength, obedience, discipline. All for this? Her father didn't even look at her. Didn't see her. He was already turning away, stumbling toward the wreckage of the living room, muttering curses under his breath, already searching for another drink. And Sky just knelt there, not crying, not screaming, just staring at the floor, at the shards of glass reflecting the broken pieces of a daughter he never wanted. Chapter 27. The Doctor's Office. The fluorescent lighting was too bright. It buzzed faintly overhead, sterile, detached. The waiting room was eerily quiet, save for the slow, rhythmic ticking of a cheap wall clock. The air smelled of disinfectant and something else, something cold. A nurse spotted them instantly. No clipboard check was needed. Recognition flickered in her eyes, pity wrapped in routine. At the reception desk, the nurse sighed, barely concealing it. "Back again, Mrs. Vance?" Sky's mother offered a weak smile, her voice too practiced. "You know me, always in a hurry. Slipped in the kitchen this time." Sky clenched her fists. It was always the same excuse. The stairs, a slippery floor, a misplaced rug. Never the truth. The nurse's gaze flicked to Sky. "And you?" Sky's jaw tightened. She touched her cheek where the bottle had nicked her, feeling the faint sting beneath her fingertips. "Got in the way." A pause followed, thick and silent. The nurse didn't press. She never did. What was the point? The chart would read the same as always. In the exam room, the doctor barely looked at them. He flipped through the paperwork like it was a script he had memorized years ago. He didn't even ask what happened. Her mother made a joke, light-hearted, effortless. "I should really watch my step more, huh?" The doctor chuckled politely. Sky's stomach turned. A prescription for painkillers. That was the solution. Always the solution. The exam was over in less than 10 minutes. "Try to take it easy, Mrs. Vance," the doctor said, already moving on to the next chart. "Next time, you might not be so lucky." Sky watched her mother nod along, laughing softly, as if this were just another routine checkup. But her hands shook as she gathered her things. Outside, the sun was too bright, mocking. The sharp scent of sterilized air was replaced by gasoline and city dust. Sky watched her mother dig through her purse for gum. Her hands were still trembling. Sky exhaled, forced herself to speak. "He almost killed you." Her mother stilled, just for a second. Then, softly, without looking up. "But he didn't." A beat of silence. Sky closed her eyes. Because the worst part? Her mother believed that was enough. Chapter 28. The ride was quiet. Her mother sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her gaze fixed on the passing streetlights. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the occasional turn signal clicking in the silence. No one spoke about the doctor's office. No one spoke about the bottle. No one spoke about him. It was easier that way. The headlights carved a path through the dimly lit streets, the city shrinking behind them as they approached the neighborhood where her aunt lived. The houses here were older, smaller, the kind that had worn porches and curtains drawn tight. A place Sky had only visited a handful of times. Her mother shifted slightly, breaking the silence. "He'll be back to normal in the morning." Sky's hands tightened around the wheel. "After he sleeps it off," her mother continued, her voice light, as if she were discussing the weather. "But maybe it's a good idea to stay here for the night." A compromise. Sky didn't answer. She pulled into the driveway instead, the tires crunching softly over gravel. The porch light flickered on, casting a warm glow across the front steps. Her aunt must have seen them arrive. The front door opened before they even reached it. Chapter 29. What happened? No hesitation, no pleasantries. Sky's aunt stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her gaze sweeping over her sister. "It was just an accident," her mother said smoothly. The same tired script, the same forced smile. "I'm fine, really." "Bullshit." The word was sharp, cutting through the night air. Sky's mother flinched, but her aunt didn't back down. She stepped aside, holding the door open. "Come inside." For a moment, Sky thought her mother might resist, might try to reassure them both that everything was fine. But instead, she let out a small sigh and stepped inside without another word. Sky lingered at the threshold. She should go in, make sure everything was settled. But her mother was safe now. Safe for tonight. "You're not staying?" her aunt asked, eyeing Sky carefully. Sky shook her head. "I have to get back." Her aunt studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "You look exhausted." Sky forced a smirk. "Yeah, well, long day." Her aunt didn't argue. She just gave a small nod like she understood more than she was letting on. Drive safe, Sky. Sky gave a small nod in return, then turned back toward the car. She made it 5 blocks before she had to pull over. The second she put the car in park, her breath hitched. She gripped the steering wheel hard enough for her knuckles to turn white, her forehead resting against it as the first sob ripped through her. It came fast, unstoppable. Years' worth of something sharp and aching clawing its way out of her chest. She didn't make a sound. Just let it crash over her, shoulders shaking, tears hitting the back of her hands like rain. She wasn't a soldier right now. She wasn't strong. She was just Sky. Just a daughter, and it hurt. She didn't know how long she sat there. Eventually, the tears slowed. The ache settled into something dull, something she could push down again. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her jacket, exhaled hard, and leaned back against the headrest. The base wasn't far. She could make it, so she started the engine, pulled back onto the road, and didn't look back. Next chapter. The training grounds. The next day, the world expected her to function. No one cared that she had barely slept, that she had spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of what had happened at her parents' house, that she had washed the dried blood from her cheek in the sterile glow of the barracks bathroom, hands trembling as she pressed her fingers against the cut. None of it mattered here. Not in the training grounds. The morning routine. Sky stood in formation with the other recruits, the twin suns glaring down on them, casting long shadows across the dust-covered ground. The instructors paced like wolves, eyes sharp, scanning for weakness. "Today is not your day to be tired," barked Sergeant Yorick, a hulking figure with a voice that could split stone. "Today is your day to become something worthy of the uniform you wear. If you think otherwise, step off my training field and go find a civilian job." No one moved, not even Sky, even though she wanted to. Her soul energy coiled around her wrists like restless serpents, waiting, anticipating. The obstacle course. The first hour was grueling. Weighted runs, wall climbs, unrelenting sprints across sand dunes that swallowed weaker cadets whole. The second hour was worse. Simulated battlefield conditions, low visibility, smoke screens, the roar of gunfire echoing through the canyon walls. Sky moved on instinct, her body a machine, her emotions buried beneath sheer exhaustion. Her arms ached, her lungs burned, but she welcomed the pain. It was something real, something she could fight. Mock combat and Sol weapon drills. Finally, they were lined up in pairs, sparring weapons materializing from Sol energy in their hands. Sky clenched her fingers, watching as blue light bled into the shape of twin short swords. The weight was familiar, but today her balance felt off. "Vance, Parker, you're up." She turned. Her opponent, a tall, broad-shouldered soldier named Parker, grinned, twirling his soul-forged spear between his fingers. "You look like hell, Vance." Sky ignored the comment. She adjusted her stance, gripping the hilts of her weapons. She needed this fight. "Ready?" the instructor called. Parker smirked. "Always." "Begin!" The moment the fight started, Sky's mind went blank. Parker lunged first, swinging low. She dodged, rolling to the side, her foot kicking up dust. She countered, striking fast, her swords a blur of blue light. He blocked, just barely stumbling back, eyes wide. "Damn, Vance, you wake up angry?" Sky didn't answer. She just attacked again, harder, faster. Her movements became sharper, more aggressive, fueled by something deeper than training. The instructor called for restraint, but she wasn't listening. Parker swung again. Sky parried, but instead of disengaging, she twisted. She swept his legs out from under him. Parker hit the ground hard. Stunned, Sky pinned him, blade at his throat, her breathing ragged. The training field had gone silent. Her body was still tense, her soul energy flickering dangerously. "Vance!" The instructor's voice snapped her back. She blinked, realizing where she was. Parker was beneath her, hands raised in surrender, staring at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. The blue glow of her weapons dimmed. Sky exhaled sharply, stepping back. As Parker stood, rubbing his neck, the instructor stepped forward. "Control yourself, Vance." The tone was low, cold, a warning. "You forget that, and you won't just be dangerous to your enemies. You'll be dangerous to your own." Sky clenched her jaw, said nothing. The lesson continued, but for the rest of the day she felt the stares, the whispers, and for the first time she wondered if they were right to be afraid. Next chapter. Sky waited until the moment was right. She had spotted Miles leaning against a railing, laughing with his squad mates outside the mess hall. The sound of their voices blended into the evening hum of the base. The low murmur of conversations, the distant clang of metal, the occasional bark of a drill instructor tearing into some unfortunate recruit. She took a steady breath. She wasn't an idiot. She had noticed how he had been avoiding her all week. The ignored messages, the sudden changes in routine. She had tried to tell herself it wasn't intentional, that maybe he was just busy. But Miles wasn't the kind of man to be too busy, and she needed to hear it from him. Sky approached, keeping her posture casual, hands stuffed in her pockets. As she drew near, Miles caught sight of her and his smile faltered. Just for a second, a flicker of hesitation, a flicker of guilt, but then it was gone. She stopped just outside the group, tilting her head slightly. "Hey, Miles, got a second?" His squad mates exchanged looks. One of them, a tall guy with a buzz cut, gave a low whistle. "Oh, someone's got unfinished business." The others chuckled. Sky forced a smirk, though her fingers curled tighter into her pockets. "Private conversation," she added, voice light but firm. Miles hesitated again, but then he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, all right." He pushed off the railing, following her a few steps away toward the shadows near the barracks. It wasn't completely private, but it was enough. Sky turned to face him. So, he echoed, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. She exhaled slowly. No point in dancing around it. "What's going on?" she asked. "You've been ghosting me all week." Miles glanced away for a split second before fixing his gaze back on her. "I figured you'd get the hint." The words hit her harder than a punch. Sky stiffened, but kept her voice steady. "I thought we had a connection." His jaw tightened. "We did," he admitted, "but it was just a good time." Sky felt something sink inside her, but still she pressed. "Last week you said I was 1 in a million." Miles gave a short, humorless laugh. "I say a lot of things when I've had a few drinks." Sky inhaled sharply through her nose. Her soul energy stirred around her wrists, subtle but present. "So that's it? One night, and now I don't exist?" Miles sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, Sky, you're a good soldier, all right? But I'm a senior officer. It wouldn't be proper." Sky stared at him. Miles shifted, glancing back toward the mess hall. His squad mates were still hanging around, probably waiting to see if he'd come back. It was obvious now. He wasn't embarrassed by what they did. He was embarrassed by her. She clenched her fists. "Wouldn't be proper." She let the words settle on her tongue, let the weight of them sink in. Then she scoffed. "Got it." Miles didn't say anything else. He just nodded slightly like it was some kind of confirmation. Like that was that. Sky turned before she could punch him in the mouth. She didn't storm off, didn't make a scene. She just walked away, every step stiff, controlled. But her soul energy pulsed violently, a sharp crack of light flaring up around her fingers. She forced it down. Next chapter. The barracks were quiet that night. Most soldiers were either asleep, on patrol, or still drinking away the day's stress in the mess hall. The few that remained sat in their bunks, reading or polishing their gear in the dim glow of the overhead lamps. Sky sat cross-legged on her cot, rolling a small sphere of soul energy between her fingers absent-mindedly. The faint blue glow pulsed, stretching and contracting like it was breathing. Across from her, Nova Soren lay stretched out on her own cot, propped up on one elbow, watching her with a knowing smirk. "You're doing the thing again, Sky," Nova said, voice light. Sky blinked. "What thing?" Nova gestured lazily toward the soul energy. "The brooding light trick. You always do it when something's eating at you." Sky huffed, closing her fingers and snuffing out the glow. "I don't brood." Sure." Nova pushed herself up, sitting cross-legged now, mirroring Sky's position. She was shorter than Sky, but built like a brawler, lean muscle, sharp features, a wild streak in her grin that never quite faded, even when she was dead serious. They had been in training together since the start, and if there was anyone Sky actually trusted, it was her. "All right, out with it. What happened?" Sky hesitated. It wasn't like her to talk about things. Not like this. But tonight she felt raw. She exhaled. "Miles." Nova groaned. "Ugh, of course it's a man." "Shut up. I'm just saying, Vance, you could do way better." Sky shook her head, staring down at her hands. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything," she admitted. "But then he said all the right things, and I don't know. I thought maybe it was different." Nova made a face. "Let me guess. He did the whole, 'You're amazing, Sky. You're so smart. You're a catch' speech?" Sky shot her a look. Nova grinned. "Yeah, that's the classic I want to get in your pants routine. Works like a charm on the hopeful ones. I wasn't hopeful. You sure about that? Sky fell silent. Nova's teasing softened a little. Listen, she said, voice steady now, serious. Miles is a coward. Not just because he ghosted you, but because he let you walk away like that without a damn second thought. That's on him, not you. Sky exhaled sharply. I just feel stupid. You're not stupid, you're just someone who actually gives a damn. And that's a good thing, Sky. Even if it sucks sometimes. Sky let the words settle in her chest. The barracks light flickered above them, casting long shadows on the walls. Then Nova leaned back on her cot, stretching her arms behind her head. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You'll forget about him soon enough. Sky arched a brow. Oh yeah, how's that? Nova hesitated. And just like that, something in the air changed. A slight shift. A new weight in the silence. Nova didn't meet her eyes at first. Then she sighed. I got my orders today. I'm being deployed to the field. Sky felt her stomach drop. When? Nova finally met her gaze. 3 days. The world felt suddenly smaller. Sky opened her mouth, then closed it again, pressing her lips together. Nova gave a small, crooked smile. Guess you'll have to start brooding with someone else for a while. Sky huffed out a small, disbelieving laugh, but it felt hollow. I don't brood, she repeated. Sure, keep telling yourself that. The two sat there, the silence stretching between them like an unspoken promise. And for the first time all day, Sky felt something worse than rejection. She felt alone. Next chapter. The training grounds hummed with energy, the air thick with tension and heat. The sun hung high, casting long violet-hued streaks across the horizon, but the real light, the real power, came from the warriors standing in formation. Sky adjusted the wraps on her wrists, flexing her fingers, feeling the pulsing warmth of soul energy beneath her skin. It wasn't just light. It was will. It was focus. It was a weapon that responded to the intent of its wielder. Her intent? Push it further. Captain Vana, hard-edged and unyielding, strode down the line, her golden soul-infused gauntlets gleaming in the midday light. Today we advance, she announced, voice sharp as steel. You've all proven your ability to summon and wield soul energy, but now we refine. You will control it, not the other way around. A warrior who cannot adjust their power is a liability on the field. Sky rolled her shoulders, feeling the weight of yesterday still lingering on her bones. She needed this. Vana gestured toward the open field. 3 levels of force. Level 1 displacement, knocking a target off balance without harm. Level 2 impact, strong enough to disable. Level 3, she let the words hang in the air. Lethal velocity. A row of humanoid constructs shifted into place, each made of dense alloy, their surfaces marked with concentric rings to measure precision. Step forward one at a time, show your control. Sky inhaled. Her turn would come soon enough. The first few soldiers stepped up. David, the wisecracking loudmouth of the division, went first. His soul shot forward, knocking the target back, but with uneven force. He grimaced. Damn. Still too much kick. Parker, one of the strongest in the division, adjusted his stance. His first shot sent a perfect, balanced shockwave, knocking the target back without damage. His second, a direct impact to the chest plate, denting it. His third, a precise, bullet-like blast punching a hole clean through the metal. Captain Vana nodded. Controlled, measured, efficient, next. Sky stepped forward. Sky's test. She closed her eyes for a brief second. Breathe in. Feel the soul not as raw power but as an extension of her mind. Breathe out. Adjust. She raised her palm, aiming at the first target. Level 1 displacement. A pulse of energy shot forward, a soft, invisible push. The target staggered back, tilting but staying upright. Sky adjusted the flow, perfecting the balance between force and restraint. Level 2 impact. She sharpened the energy. This time the blast struck with full force, sending the target skidding backward several feet. A dent formed at the center mass where her energy had struck. Sky smirked. So far, so good. Level 3 lethal velocity. The air around her shifted. This was the test. She summoned the soul into a small, compact sphere, compressing it tighter. It burned hotter, humming like a live current in her palm. Her heartbeat slowed. She aimed. The shot fired. A crack of blinding blue light ripped across the field, hitting the target dead center. Silence. Then a clean circular hole burned through the alloy. The metallic stink of scorched metal filled the air. Sky lowered her hand. Her chest rose and fell steadily. She had done it. "You aimed center mass," the captain said, voice unreadable. Sky nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Vena held her gaze. "And if that were a person?" Sky swallowed. "Then they'd be dead," she answered. Vena didn't blink. "That doesn't bother you?" Sky didn't answer right away. Her mind flashed to her father, to Miles, to every ounce of frustration sitting just beneath her skin. She met Vena's gaze. "No, ma'am." The silence stretched. "Good." Vena's expression didn't change. "You're dismissed." Sky exhaled and stepped away. But something in the air still clung to her. She wasn't sure if she had impressed them or worried them. Next chapter. The air was different that morning. Sky didn't know how to describe it, just that it was. The barracks were quieter than usual. Maybe it was the weight of the impending departure, or maybe it was just her. Either way, it was suffocating. Nova's cot was already stripped bare, her gear packed and slung over her shoulder. It was a sight Sky had seen too many times. Soldiers came and went, friends left, some returned, some didn't. Sky leaned against the doorframe, watching as Nova checked the last of her things. "You're up early," Sky muttered. Nova grinned over her shoulder, but it was softer than usual. "Figured I'd let you have one last chance to confess your undying love before I ship out." Sky snorted. "Damn! I was going to save that for your retirement party." Missed opportunity. Sky's smirk faltered just a little. She looked down, rolling her weight from one foot to the other. "You got everything?" she asked. Nova exhaled. "Yeah, just waiting for transport now." There it was, the finality of it. Sky hated this part. She had never been good at goodbyes. The silence stretched between them, neither wanting to say what needed to be said. Then Nova reached into her pocket and pulled something out. A small, folded cloth. "Here," she said, tossing it to Sky. Sky caught it, brow furrowing as she unfolded it. It was a handkerchief, deep blue. "You and your damn blue obsession," Nova said with a smile. Sky rubbed her thumb over the embroidered edges. Nova chuckled. "Something to remember me by. You're acting like you're never coming back." Nova's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You never know." Sky's chest tightened. She wanted to say something. Tell her to be careful. Tell her she'd punch her in the face if she didn't come back. Tell her she wasn't ready to lose another person. Instead, she just clenched the handkerchief tighter. Nova slung her bag over her shoulder and let out a breath. "All right, Sky girl, I gotta go." Sky forced a smirk. "Try not to get yourself killed, Nova." Nova winked. "Try not to miss me too much." And then she was gone. Sky stood there for a long moment, the barracks eerily empty without Nova's presence. She looked down at the cloth in her hands. The blue looked darker than before. Then she tucked it away and left quietly. Next chapter, a year later. The branches of the old willow tree swayed lazily in the warm afternoon breeze, their trailing vines shifting like ghostly fingers. Sky sat beneath it, her back against the rough bark, boots planted firmly in the soft earth. The shade provided a welcome break from the heat, the air filled with the soft hum of distant cicadas. Across from her, her mother sat in a simple wooden chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The past year had been kinder to her than most, or at least she made it seem that way. The bruises had long since faded, and Sky liked to believe her father had at least somewhat learned his lesson. Or maybe he just knew better than to lay hands on her mother again now that Sky had officially become a scout. She had changed. The past year had hardened her in ways she hadn't fully understood until she had come home. She had grown stronger, sharper, quicker, but standing here, in this familiar yard, beneath this familiar tree, she still felt like a daughter. Her mother sighed, brushing a stray leaf from her dress. "I still think you're too young for this." Sky smiled gently, resting an arm on her bent knee. "I'm 26, Mom, kind of past the too young stage." Her mother gave her a pointed look. "You'll always be too young to me." Sky huffed a soft laugh, but it was gentle. She leaned her head back against the tree, staring up at the shifting canopy of green above her. "It's not like I'm going to war, Mom. Scouts just explore, map uncharted territories, keep an eye on things." A lie? Or maybe just a half-truth? Her mother gave her that look, the one that said she wasn't fooled. "You always said you wanted to see the world," her mother mused, tilting her head. "I just wish it wasn't through the eyes of a soldier." Sky shifted slightly, twirling a small tendril of soul energy between her fingers. The tiny light pulsed softly before dissolving into the air. "It's not about being a soldier," she murmured. "It's about being useful." Her mother sighed, leaning forward slightly. Sky, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Sky froze. She glanced at her mother, then quickly looked away. It's not about proving anything, she said too quickly. Her mother's expression softened. Sweetheart. That word, that tone. Sky composed herself. This wasn't really a conversation she wanted to have. Mom, I just want you to be happy. Sky exhaled, forcing a small smile. Well, happiness is overrated. Her mother shook her head, but she didn't argue. Instead, she just reached out, taking Sky's hand in hers. Come home when you can, all right? Sky squeezed her mother's hand gently. Always. The wind shifted. The willow leaves rustled like whispers. Sky let herself breathe it in. Tomorrow, she'd be back on base. But for tonight, she was just Sky. Next chapter. We've got problems. The words hit before Sky even stepped through the door. She had barely set foot back on the base when Lieutenant Carver, one of the higher-ups in military intelligence, caught her in the corridor. She raised a brow, adjusting the strap of her scout's pack over her shoulder. We always have problems. Carver wasn't amused. Not like this, he said, motioning for her to follow. Sky exhaled, falling in step beside him. This wasn't a debriefing. This was something else. A holographic map flickered to life in the dimly lit war room, the soft hum of energy vibrating through the air. Sky crossed her arms, watching as the display shifted, one world after another appearing in front of her. Carver tapped a few controls, zooming in on one specific realm. It was a stark contrast to her home. The lush blues, sleek architecture, and shimmering rivers of soul energy she knew were nowhere to be seen. Instead, massive industrial cities sprawled across the land, their skylines choked with gears, smokestacks, and massive airships. Steam rose from the streets, mixing with constant factory smog. Giant bronze blimps hovered over the city, their hulls adorned with military insignias. This wasn't home. This was somewhere else entirely. This, Carver said, pointing at the largest city on the map, is the focal point. Sky frowned. Focal point of what? Carver exhaled. Disruptions. Sky straightened. You're talking fractures. We don't know exactly what's causing them, Carver admitted. But we've traced the origin back to this realm. It's stable for now, but the disturbances are growing. If it spreads, it could be catastrophic. Sky frowned, tapping her fingers against her arm. And what do you need me for? A new image flickered onto the screen. A man, older, clad in a crisp officer's uniform with medals lining his chest. This is Admiral Trenholm. He's one of the highest-ranking figures in their realm. He's agreed to meet with you in person, to discuss what's happening. Sky arched a brow. You're sending me in alone? You're a scout. This is what you do. Sky stared at the map, her breath catching. A whisper, more to herself than anyone else. A world of steam. Sky stared at the shifting map, the streets of gears and brass, the endless layers of machinery churning beneath the surface. She had grown up in a world of sleek angles and blue-lit towers. Now they were sending her into a realm of steam and rust, dust, and smoke. A world that wasn't hers. When do I leave? She asked finally. Carver didn't hesitate. Tomorrow. Next chapter. Sky blinked. I'm sorry, what? Carver didn't flinch. The technology used to transport you, he said, nodding toward Dr. Marin, the lead scientist on the project, has a number of operational risks we need to disclose. Sky raised a brow. Define operational risks. Dr. Marin hesitated, then spoke, his voice edged with discomfort. There is currently a 67% chance of return transport failure. Sky let the number sink in. 67%. More than half. That means, Carver continued, his tone cool and clinical. Once you're in, there's a 67% chance you will not be coming back. Sky exhaled slowly, rolling her jaw. You're just now telling me this? Carver gave a mild shrug. Would you have accepted the mission if we told you up front? Sky glared. Point taken. Her gaze shifted to Dr. Marin, who looked markedly less comfortable about the situation than Carver did. Tell me about the 33%, she said, crossing her arms. Marin cleared his throat. If the transport succeeds, you'll arrive safely in the designated realm. If the technology malfunctions. He trailed off. Sky narrowed her eyes. Go on. We aren't entirely sure what happens. She stared at him. Great. That's reassuring. Look, Marin said, rubbing at his temple. This is experimental. We've never attempted cross-realm transportation before. But if the fractures are spreading the way we suspect, we can't afford to wait. Sky inhaled deeply, her fingers tapping against her leg. And there's no other way in? Carver shook his head. No, this is all we have. Sky looked between the two men, studying their faces. They were serious. They were really going to send her in with a one-way ticket and a prayer. And yet something inside her thrummed. Excitement? Fear? Didn't matter. She had already made up her mind. She tilted her head, smirking. "Well, guess I better be in that 33% then." Carver let out a short, dry chuckle. "That's the spirit." Marin just looked queasy. Sky clapped her hands together, rocking back on her heels. "All right, gentlemen, what's the plan?" Next chapter. Sky sat alone in her quarters that night, staring at the shifting patterns of soul energy swirling between her fingers. The soft blue light pulsed gently, casting faint shadows across the walls. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. 67% chance of return failure. She had smiled, joked. But now, alone in the quiet, she could feel the weight of it pressing against her ribs. This wasn't just another mission. It was the mission. The one that would prove to them, to herself, that she belonged. That she wasn't just a scout with a good record. That she wasn't just a soldier filling a role. That she wasn't just his daughter. Her father's words echoed in her head. "I wish I had a damn son." She squeezed her fists shut, the soul energy flickering out. He had never said he regretted having her, but he never had to. This mission, it was her chance. A chance to show him. A chance to show everyone. Sky exhaled sharply, forcing herself to her feet. There was no room for doubt, no time for hesitation. Tomorrow she was leaving, and she would come back. Not because of luck, but because she was going to make it happen. Next chapter. The air inside the house was too still. Sky sat across from her mother at the kitchen table, a cool cup of tea between them, long since forgotten. The small ceramic cups were part of a matching set, delicate and hand-painted. Sky had no idea where her mother got them, only that they had been there forever. The ticking of the clock on the wall filled the silence. "When do you leave?" her mother finally asked. Sky traced the rim of her cup with her thumb, avoiding her mother's gaze. "Tomorrow morning." Her mother's hands were folded neatly in her lap, but Sky could see the faint tremble in her right one. Sky swallowed. She had to tell her. "Mom?" Sky hesitated, voice quieter than usual. Her mother waited. "There's a chance I won't be able to come back." The words hung between them. Her mother's face didn't change, not at first. She simply nodded, slow and measured, as if she had already known. "How much of a chance?" Sky exhaled. "More than half." A pause. Then, finally, her mother's shoulders sank. She wasn't shocked, just tired. "I figured as much," her mother murmured, rubbing her wrist absent-mindedly, the same wrist that had been twisted too hard all those years ago. Sky's stomach twisted. "Mom, if something happens—" "Please don't." Her mother cut her off gently. Sky's breath hitched. Her mother's hand trembled again. It was slight, but Sky noticed. She always noticed. She wanted to reach for it, to steady it, but she didn't. "You have to go, don't you?" her mother finally asked. Sky hesitated. She should say no. She should say there was still time to reconsider, but that would be a lie. "Yeah," Sky said, voice barely above a whisper. Her mother closed her eyes for a moment, exhaling slowly. Then she reached forward, not for her tea, not to rub at her wrist, but for Sky's hand. Sky stiffened at the contact, but didn't pull away. Her mother's grip was gentle, but firm. "Then you have to come back." Sky smiled gently. "I'll try." Her mother shook her head. "Don't try, Sky, just do it." A silence stretched between them, heavy, unspoken things hanging in the air. Then she gave a small, shaky nod. "Okay." Her mother squeezed her fingers one last time before letting go. Sky's mind was racing, holding in everything she wanted to say. Instead, she pushed the tea aside and stood. "I'll be back, Mom." And this time she would make damn sure of it. Next chapter. The room smelled like dust and old memories. Sky sat on the edge of her childhood bed, a half-opened box of old drawings spread out in front of her. Faded pages, crumpled edges, snapshots of a mind that once thought the world was simple. She hadn't been in here much since moving out. The walls were still the same shade of soft blue, the ceiling still speckled with tiny glow-in-the-dark stars she had insisted on sticking up there when she was 6. Some had peeled away over time, but most still clung stubbornly, a small universe frozen in place. Sky flipped through the drawings absently. Castles, space adventures. And then she stopped. One page stood out among the rest. A crude family portrait drawn in shaky crayon strokes. Her mother was there, smiling. Her young self was there too, drawn in bright blue, her favorite color even then. But her father, Sky frowned. He was different. His figure was larger, looming over the two of them. His face was warped, jagged, scrawled in deep red and black, with clawed hands stretched wide. A monster. Sky's chest tightened. She didn't remember drawing this. She stared at the image, trying to reach back into the mind of the child who had. Had she always seen him that way? Had she always known? The memory refused to surface. All that remained was this drawing, this unfiltered, unspoken truth from years ago. Sky exhaled slowly, folding the paper. She didn't know why she had drawn it. She didn't know if it even mattered anymore. But she tucked it into her pack anyway, because some things, no matter how long you bury them, never really go away. Next chapter, The Disappearance of Aldous Thornwell. News headline: The mysterious disappearance of Professor Aldous Thornwell, the city's celebrated yet divisive inventor, known for his groundbreaking work in mechanical automation, has vanished without a trace. Professor Thornwell was last seen leaving his workshop on Coppergear Avenue late Tuesday evening. His destination remains unknown. Authorities have yet to comment on the nature of his disappearance, but speculation is already running rampant, some claiming foul play, others whispering of a self-imposed exile. His colleagues remain tight-lipped, and the laboratory doors remain locked. What was he working on in his final days? And what will happen to his unfinished projects? Silas stared at the crisp black ink, the words smudging slightly under his fingertips as he tightened his grip on the paper. He read it again and again, but no matter how many times his eyes ran over the words, they refused to make sense. Thornwell was gone. The last time Silas had seen him just a few days ago, he had been preparing for the activation, fine-tuning the machine, arguing with the investors. And now he had simply vanished? Silas exhaled sharply, folding the newspaper and shoving it into his coat pocket. It wasn't that he liked Thornwell. It wasn't that he trusted him. But the man had been part of this mess from the beginning. And people like him didn't just disappear. Not without help. Not without a reason. He stepped out onto the fog-drenched streets, his boots clicking against damp cobblestone as he turned toward the only place he knew to go, the laboratory. If Thornwell was truly gone, then Silas needed answers, and he needed them now. Next chapter. The laboratory was sealed. Not just locked, but guarded. Silas stood across the street, hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, his mind racing as he took in the unmistakable presence of military personnel. Not the local constables, not the usual security detail. Uniformed soldiers stood at the entrances, rifles in hand, faces unreadable. The mark of military jurisdiction was unmistakable. Silas exhaled slowly, scanning the edges of the building. The once bustling workshop, where engineers and assistants had always been coming and going, now sat eerily still. Whatever had happened here, it wasn't a normal disappearance. He stepped closer, casually, like he was just another man going about his day. A young recruit, barely out of training, stood near the entrance, his stance stiff, uncertain. Silas tipped his head toward the lab. "What's going on here?" The recruit blinked, hesitating. "Orders, sir. No entry. Professor Thornwell's laboratory is now under military review." Silas narrowed his eyes. And what exactly does that mean? The recruit swallowed, looking unsure. Then, almost nervously, he glanced to his right, toward an older officer standing near the entrance. That man, his uniform pressed, his mustache trimmed to an absurd degree, looked more than sure of himself. And he was watching Silas. Silas barely spared him a glance before stepping back. All right, so they've locked it down. That means they're hiding something. He wasn't about to be detained for pushing too hard. Not yet. With a last glance at the sealed laboratory, he turned on his heel and walked away. His next move would have to be more careful. Next chapter. The worksite was in chaos. The air stank of sweat and hot steel, the rhythmic clang of metal on metal punctuated by the unmistakable sound of Foreman Hastings losing his temper. "Where the hell is my beam?" His voice cut through the dust-choked afternoon, red-faced and furious, veins bulging as he loomed over the trembling delivery driver. The poor bastard looked half ready to bolt, but Hastings wasn't letting him off that easy. "I took the damn road I always take," the driver stammered, hands raised as if he could fend off the foreman's wrath. "I've been driving that route for 3 years, but today—" A pause, a deep breath. The street wasn't there. The worksite went quiet, not silent. There was still the hum of power tools, the clatter of machinery, but the kind of quiet where men listened, where they stopped just enough to catch the edges of a conversation they weren't meant to hear. Hastings, still seething, barely registered it. "What do you mean it wasn't there?" "I mean it was gone!" The driver's voice cracked with frustration. "I drove circles for 2 damn hours. Every turn I took led me back to where I started." Zeke, sweating under the relentless sun, rolled his eyes. Hastings threw fits daily about deadlines, missing materials, the general incompetence of every living soul. Zeke wasn't the only one noticing it. A few workers near him had stopped hauling bricks, murmuring among themselves. Voices kept low. "Ain't the first time this has happened, you know." "Yeah? What are you talking about?" "Old Jack went to grab a pint last night. Swears the entire alley behind the Gull had moved." "The one that cuts behind the mill?" "Yeah, except now it leads to a goddamn dead end." "Bullshit." "Swear it. Brick wall, smooth as if it had been there forever." Zeke didn't believe in ghost stories. But the way the men looked at each other, the way their voices dipped, their glances darting, unsettled him. This wasn't just idle gossip. It was fear, and before he could say anything, a crash. A pile of bricks tumbled from the scaffolding above, barely missing a worker. Hastings whirled on the men, his fury finding a new target. "Who the hell stacked those bricks? That scaffolding was secure!" The workers scrambled, checking the supports, swearing up and down that nothing had been out of place. One of them muttered, just loud enough for Zeke to catch. "Things ain't right in this city, man. Feels like the whole damn place is shifting under our feet." Zeke wiped the sweat from his brow, shaking off the creeping unease. It was just a road mix-up. Just an alley being walled off. Just bricks falling. Nothing strange. Nothing unnatural. Just bad luck. And yet, as he turned, his gaze drifted to the city skyline. His stomach twisted. For just a blink, just an instant. The tallest building in the district wasn't where it was supposed to be. Like it had moved. Then just as fast it was back. Zeke swallowed hard. Shook it off. But the rumors were starting, and he didn't like what he was hearing. "All right, fellas," Zeke called out, clapping his hands together. "I got one important question for you." The men turned, expectant. "Are your balls still intact?" A pause. Then a confused chorus of, "Huh?" Zeke grinned, throwing his towel over his shoulder. "Just checking. Y'all talking like reality's breaking apart or something. Wanted to make sure we weren't losing the important parts first." A few snorts of laughter. Someone chucked a wrench at him, missing by a mile. "Hey," Zeke continued, stretching his arms. "Don't forget, we got a game tonight." That got a round of groans. "You're just excited 'cause your team's on a hot streak," someone grumbled. "Damn right," Zeke smirked. "And because I plan on wiping the floor with you all." A few of the guys chuckled, shaking their heads. Even Hastings calmed down slightly. Next chapter. The gym smelled like sweat, leather, and old wood polish, the overhead lights humming faintly as the players took their positions on the court. Zeke stretched his arms over his head, rolling out his shoulders. He wasn't the fastest player, wasn't the flashiest, but he was a damn good teammate, and he played with heart. "All right, boys," he called out as his team huddled together before the tip-off. "Let's run it clean. No stupid fouls, no hero ball. We move it fast, we move it smart." Ryder, his best shooter, let out a cocky snort. "You saying that 'cause you don't want to get dunked on again?" Zeke grinned. "Listen, I'm man enough to admit it. I'm not stopping Big Henry in the paint, so I'm leaving that to you." Ryder's smirk dropped. "Wait, what?" The whistle blew. The ball was tipped, and the game was on. Zeke wasn't the star, but he played smart. He called the plays. He set the picks. He fed his teammates. When the team was falling apart, he pulled them back together. At one point, he saw Liam, the rookie from the construction site, hesitate at the three-point line. Zeke clapped his hands. "Take it, kid!" Liam hesitated. Then he took the shot. Swish. The crowd cheered, and Liam's face lit up. Zeke jogged past him, grinning. "See? Told you. Just shoot the damn thing." The game was tight. 1 minute left. Down by 1. Zeke's team had possession. The gym was electric. Ryder wanted the shot, but the defense swarmed him. Zeke saw an opening. "Liam!" he called, already knowing the kid was wide open. Liam caught the pass, eyes wide, hands shaking. The defense rushed toward him. He shot. Buzzer. Net. Victory. The gym exploded with cheers. Zeke laughed, throwing an arm around Liam's shoulders. "Hell of a shot, kid," he said, shaking him slightly. Liam was still in shock. I made it," Ryder grumbled, ruffling the kid's hair. Yeah, don't let it get to your head." After the game, the team hit the local bar, celebrating. Zeke leaned against the counter, sipping his beer, watching his teammates trash talk and relive the best plays. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about work. He wasn't thinking about rumors. He wasn't thinking about missing professors. Just his team, his friends, the game. And for tonight, that was enough. Next chapter, Red Eyes in the Dark. The hum of gears never truly stopped in the city. Even in the stillness of night, there was a rhythm to the world, steam vents hissing, distant machinery groaning beneath cobbled streets, the constant ticking of unseen clocks. Ezekiel sat in his usual corner of the cafe. Outside, the lamps burned low, casting long, flickering shadows over the rain-slicked streets. It was a quiet night, until the whispers came again. A group of workers at the counter spoke in hushed tones, their voices just low enough to be mistaken for the steam curling from their coffee. Another city gone. Ezekiel didn't turn his head, didn't let his expression change, but he listened. "That makes two, doesn't it?" a second voice muttered. "Ain't natural. The fractures are bad enough, but this is different." "Red eyes in the night," a third voice whispered. "The ground split open and that thing crawled out. It just stood there for a moment like it was thinking. Then it started walking." Ezekiel exhaled slowly. Not this again. He'd heard the stories for weeks. Something moving underground. A metal giant shifting in its sleep. Red lights glowing where there should be nothing. But tall tales spread like wildfire when people were scared. The world had been unraveling at the seams, and now everyone was seeing monsters in the dark. The radio crackled near the cafe's entrance, its signal warped by interference. The owner, an old man with permanent grease stains on his apron, gave it a smack. The static cleared just enough for the message to come through. Emergency transmission. Second city confirmed lost. Military forces unable to contain the threat. Citizens urged to evacuate. The cafe went silent. A glass slipped from someone's fingers, shattering on the floor. Ezekiel felt his pulse in his ears. The voice on the radio continued, but it wasn't the voice that caught his attention. It was the name, Admiral Trenholm, a name from another life, from a time when he was more than just a man working construction. Someone sat down across from him. Ezekiel looked up, his expression unreadable. The man was unfamiliar, dressed in a military coat with no insignia. An old trick when you didn't want to be tied to an official command. "You don't know me," the man said, placing a folded piece of paper on the table. "But he does." Ezekiel didn't touch the note. "If he wanted to talk, he'd send for me himself." The man's expression became serious. "He's sending for everyone who can make a difference. And you can make a difference, Ezekiel." Ezekiel picked up his cup and took a slow sip. The coffee was lukewarm. "You don't know that," he said. The man sighed, glancing toward the radio. "They're calling it an anomaly. Some say it's a failed experiment. Others think it's something that crawled through one of the fractures. But we know the truth. It's old. It's waking up. And it's not stopping." Finally, Ezekiel picked up the note. Inside, one sentence was written in Trenholm's unmistakable hand. "I need you to see it for yourself." Ezekiel ran his thumb over the ink, staring at the words as if they might change. The man across from him stood. "You know where to find us." He left without another word, disappearing into the night. Ezekiel sat there for a long time, the note still between his fingers. The cafe had returned to its usual hum, but the weight in the air remained. People glanced toward the radio, pretending not to hear what they already knew. 2 cities lost, red eyes in the dark. The fractures were getting worse. Ezekiel set the note down and finished his coffee. Then he stood, and the music stopped. Next chapter. The office of Admiral Trenholm was deep within the city's military stronghold, a place of reinforced steel and flickering gaslight that smelled of sweat, brass polish, and damp paper. It had once been a fortress of order, a place where the world's unraveling edges could be controlled, charted, and contained. Now it was a war room. Ezekiel sat across from the Admiral's desk, posture relaxed but eyes sharp, hands clasped over his knee. He wasn't in uniform, hadn't been for years, but the weight of his past service still lingered in the way he carried himself. Trenholm, on the other hand, was still every inch the officer, his neatly pressed uniform betraying none of the exhaustion in his face. Behind them, the walls were lined with maps, not just of the city, but of territories beyond, marked in red ink, crisscrossed with notes and shifting battle lines. Not war exactly, not yet. But the fractures were more than just cracks in the world now. They were fault lines in society itself. "How bad is it?" Ezekiel asked, voice even. Trenholm leaned forward, elbows on his desk, exhaling sharply through his nose. "About as bad as you can imagine." A heavy silence filled the space between them. Then the Admiral straightened, gesturing toward the papers spread across his desk. "The fractures are expanding. You already know that. But it's more than that. It's not just anomalies, strange forests appearing, structures blinking in and out of existence. It's the people. Ezekiel didn't react, waiting for him to continue. We're seeing divisions inside the government, inside the military itself. Agencies that used to cooperate are at each other's throats. Strategic disputes turning into outright hostilities. We had 2 different task forces nearly come to armed conflict last week over jurisdiction alone. Ezekiel raised a brow. What the hell are they fighting over? Trenholm let out a mirthless chuckle. Everything. Who controls the resources? Who gets to study the fractures? Who gets exclusive rights to what's coming through those fractures? He shook his head. And then there's the civilian response. Some believe this is divine intervention. Others say it's a government conspiracy. Riots are breaking out in cities still untouched by the worst of it. People are scared. And when people are scared, they look for someone to blame. Ezekiel dragged a hand down his face, exhaling. And the top brass? What's their grand plan? Trenholm reached into a desk drawer and pulled out a sealed dossier. No markings, no insignia. Just a black folder, heavier than it should have been. He slid it across the desk. Ezekiel didn't touch it. You were specifically requested for this, Trenholm said. By an agency above even my clearance. The kind of people who don't exist on paper. Ezekiel looked confused. And why would they want me? Trenholm met his gaze. Hell if I know. You were assigned to the Red Eyes project when it began, maybe. The weight of those words settled between them. Ezekiel didn't blink. I was a soldier, a glorified errand boy, doing what I was told. You were more than that. Trenholm's voice was steady. You saw things no one else did, understood things no one else could. And now, you're the only one they trust to go back. Ezekiel felt his stomach coil. Go back where? Trenholm leaned back in his chair. Where this all began. Silence. The words hit harder than they should have. Ezekiel reached for the folder, opened it, read the first line. Then, for the first time in years, his hands shook. Trenholm watched him carefully. I know you wanted out, but if you don't step in now, there won't be an out left to run to. Ezekiel closed the folder. The decision had already been made. Next chapter, Project Cogwave. The war room was dim, lit only by the flickering hum of an old-world projector. Maps covered the walls, some marked with fractures, others tagged with events no one could explain. Portals appearing where they shouldn't. People vanishing. Machines waking up with minds of their own. Ezekiel sat across from Trenholm, the tension in the room pressing tight against his chest. Trenholm flipped open a folder, scanned it briefly, then slid it across the desk. This shit show's being felt everywhere, Trenholm muttered, tapping the cover. And he paused. Not just in this world. Ezekiel raised a brow. What's that supposed to mean? Trenholm turned toward the projector, adjusting the lens. A strange insignia flickered into focus, foreign, unfamiliar. Other realms have started paying attention, he said. They're asking questions. Ezekiel leaned in slightly. Can they help? No, Trenholm replied flatly. Not directly, but one realm barely has the means. They're sending a soldier to assess. The room went quiet again, save for the low whir of the projector. If we lose control of this, Trenholm continued, we won't just be answering to our own agencies. We'll be answering to powers we don't understand. Forces that don't care about borders, alliances, or politics. Ezekiel ran a hand over his beard. The fractures weren't just spreading, they were bleeding into other worlds. And now those other worlds were starting to look back. Trenholm reached for a second folder, thicker, heavier. The cover was stamped with a bold black label. Project Cogwave. As the reinforced steel doors hissed open, Zeke stepped into the dimly lit chamber, the scent of oil and ozone thick in the air. The room was cold, industrial, metallic, and clinical, with an array of cables snaking across the floor, all leading to a lone figure standing at the center. Cogwave, a masterpiece of engineering, a weapon according to the reports, a prototype with capabilities no other machine possessed. But to Zeke, the first thing he noticed wasn't the polished bronze plating or the intricate gears shifting beneath its surface. It was the eyes, not glowing red like the monsters tearing through cities, not hollow like the drones the military deployed. These were bright, calculating, aware. The machine turned its head toward him in a movement too fluid to be mechanical, as though considering him. Then, after a long pause, it spoke. You are Ezekiel Watts. Not a question, a statement. Zeke crossed his arms, giving the thing a once-over. Yeah, and you're Cogwave. That's what they tell me. Cogwave tilted his head, gears within his frame clicking softly as he processed the man before him. You were selected. That implies either exceptional skill or desperation. Which is it? Zeke raised an eyebrow. Bold first words. Cogwave's brass-plated fingers flexed, the sound of shifting metal filling the room. I am programmed to assess efficiency. Uncertainty complicates execution. Zeke smirked. You talk too much for a machine. Cogwave took a step forward. For the first time, Zeke felt something unusual. Not fear, just something else. Something hard to name. You assume I am merely a machine, Cogwave said, voice smooth, almost polite. I assume you are merely a man. Both may be incorrect. That shut Zeke up. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Cogwave inclined his head slightly, as if something about Zeke amused him. Would you like to issue a command, or shall we continue this exchange of assumptions? Zeke let out a sharp breath, running a hand through his hair. All right, metalhead. Let's get one thing straight. I don't do leash and collar routines. If you're supposed to be my partner on this, we figure things out together. Got it? Cogwave was still for a moment. Then, after a pause that stretched just long enough to be uncomfortable, he replied. Acknowledged. But there was something else in that single word. Something Zeke couldn't quite name. Zeke rolled his shoulders, feeling the weight of the contraption strapped to his back. It wasn't just heavy, it moved. Gears shifted, plates adjusted, and he could feel a subtle hum of energy coursing through the mechanisms. Feels like I've got a damn boulder strapped to me, he muttered, twisting his torso slightly. That is because I am adjusting. Cogwave's voice came through, not from in front of him, but from behind. The pack itself responded, gears clicking into place as metallic tendrils flexed outward like mechanical limbs. I must acclimate to your movements. My precision is tied to your response time. Zeke adjusted the straps and took a step forward. The pack moved with him, whisper silent, shifting in a way that almost felt alive. Trenholm leaned against the railing above them, arms crossed. Give him a rundown, Cogwave. The machine's voice carried a tone that almost resembled patience. Seamless integration. I am now affixed to your exosuit frame. My structure will shift based on engagement needs, offense, defense, reconnaissance. My response time will sync to your neural activity over time. Zeke arched a brow. And what exactly does that mean in simple terms? It means, Commander, Cogwave replied, voice just dry enough to count as sarcasm. I will be precisely where you need me before you even realize it. Before Zeke could scoff, the pack moved. A panel along his shoulder snapped open, and a sleek, articulated barrel extended over his right arm. The weapon hummed as it primed itself, shifting with the speed and confidence of a gunslinger cocking a hammer. Zeke flinched slightly. Damn thing's got a mind of its own. Correction, I am responding to your stance. The barrel retracted. In its place, two mechanical limbs unfolded, branching out over his shoulders like sentries. They rotated, scanning, adjusting their angle before clicking back into place. Then, with a soft whir, a deployable plating expanded along his back, thin yet reinforced, forming a protective guard along his spine before retracting just as quickly. Zeke exhaled. So you're my armor, my cover fire, and my extra set of eyes? More than that. Cogwave's tone remained calm, but firm. I am your second mind on the battlefield. I will anticipate threats before you see them. I will provide covering fire before you ask for it. And if necessary, I will shield you with every mechanism at my disposal. Zeke flexed his fingers. He could feel the pack, like an extension of himself. The metal shifted with his breathing, responding as if it were alive. Trenholm smirked. Still think this is just some fancy piece of gear? Zeke exhaled sharply, rolling his shoulders again. Feels like I just grew a second spine. A most efficient one, Cogwave noted. Zeke smirked, shaking his head. Guess we'll see if you're as sharp in the field as you are in here. The pack adjusted again, settling into a rest state. I look forward to the demonstration. Zeke barely had time to register the incoming projectile before the pack moved. Gears whirred, pistons engaged, and suddenly Cogwave emerged. A half-humanoid form rose from the gear pack, metal limbs unfurling as plating reconfigured itself mid-motion. A segmented torso extended upward from the pack, forming an articulated upper body with mechanical arms bracing over Zeke's shoulders. The face, if it could be called that, was a sleek metal helm with glowing blue optics, scanning the battlefield in rapid succession. Then, it fired. A rotating barrel extended from its right arm, unleashing a concentrated burst of kinetic rounds, fast, calculated, precise. It wasn't wild, suppressive fire. It was surgical. Each shot ricocheted in ways that felt intentional, like Cogwave was seeing angles Zeke couldn't. Simultaneously, the left arm deployed a hard light shield, hexagonal plates locking together in midair to absorb the incoming blasts. The shield wasn't static. It moved with Zeke, adjusting fluidly to block shots from multiple angles as he turned. Zeke stumbled slightly, feeling the balance shift. It wasn't just a backpack. It was a fully independent combat partner operating from his spine. "All right, that's a little unsettling," he muttered, adjusting his stance. "Adaptation in progress," Cogwave replied. The voice was calm and unbothered, as if this entire maneuver was nothing more than an equation being solved in real time. "Your movements dictate my positioning. Adjust your weight accordingly." Zeke clenched his jaw and shifted. He rolled with it, trusting the machine, moving with it instead of against it. And the moment he flowed into the motion, it felt natural. The humanoid half-form curved around him like an exoskeletal guardian, shielding, firing, shifting with him in perfect synchronicity. Zeke let out a slow breath, his grip tightening on his own weapon. "This is either the best damn piece of tech I've ever seen," he muttered, watching as the shield absorbed another shot. "Or it's gonna get me killed." "Correction," Cogwave said evenly. "It will keep you alive." Then, as quickly as it had emerged, the half-humanoid form retracted. The torso, the limbs, the rotating barrel, everything folded seamlessly back into the gear pack. Gears aligned, plates clicked into place, and just like that, it was a compact, humming weight on his back once more. A second later, silence. Zeke exhaled, rubbing his jaw. "Damn!" From the sidelines, Trenholm chuckled, arms crossed. "Congratulations, Commander. You just became a walking war machine." Zeke rolled his shoulders, feeling the ghost of Cogwave's form settle back into him. He smirked. "Guess we'll see." Next chapter. The briefing room had emptied, save for a handful of high-ranking officers and the dim glow of holo projections still lingering in the air. The murmurs of the departing personnel faded into the background, overtaken by the steady hiss of steam vents and the mechanical hum of the base beyond. Trenholm stood near the edge of the long table, arms crossed, his face carved into a deep mask of contemplation. The mission had been greenlit. The pieces were set in motion, but something twisted in his gut at the reality of what they were about to do. A heavy exhale from across the room pulled his attention to General Rourke, a broad, battle-worn officer with the permanent scowl of someone who had seen too many campaigns. "This is insane," Rourke muttered, rubbing a hand across his tired eyes. "We're sending a kid with a new toy to save us. What the hell is the world coming to?" Trenholm didn't answer right away. He turned toward the reinforced glass window overlooking the military hangar below, where Zeke and Cogwave were undergoing final calibrations. Engineers swarmed around them, tightening straps, reinforcing the gear pack, running last-minute diagnostics. Zeke stood with his arms outstretched as the exoskeleton flexed around him, moving with eerie synchronicity. Every slight shift in his weight was met with mechanical precision. It was unnatural how well he and Cogwave were syncing. Rourke scoffed, shaking his head. "He looks like a damn kid playing with a toy." Trenholm narrowed his eyes. "He's no ordinary soldier," Rourke snorted. "You really believe that?" Trenholm's gaze never left the hangar. "No," he said quietly, "but the higher-ups do." He paused, his voice cooling as the weight of what he was saying settled between them. "Someone above even our pay grade decided Ezekiel was the man for the job." Rourke's jaw tensed. He didn't like it. He didn't trust it. But there was no arguing with forces that didn't leave room for debate. A long silence stretched between them. Then, finally, Rourke straightened his uniform with a sigh. "Well, I hope to hell they're right. Because if that kid fails, there won't be a world left to argue about." Trenholm didn't respond. He just kept watching, as Zeke and Cogwave stepped forward ready to face their first true test, and into the unknown. Next chapter. The clang of metal on metal rang through the humid morning air, mixing with the familiar rumble of machinery and the scent of sweat, dirt, and steam. The site was already alive with movement, workers balancing on scaffolding, hauling beams, welding joints under flickering lantern light. Zeke wasn't there, and everyone knew why. "Did you hear?" The words passed between workers like wildfire, low mutters over the sound of hammers and grumbling engines. Zeke's been called back up. Nah, you're shitting me. Serious as the grave, man. Trenholm himself requested him. Some top-level mission, higher than Hastings, higher than the Guild. A few men paused mid-task, glancing toward the old spot where Zeke usually worked, his toolkit untouched, lying quiet in the morning dust. Man, one worker muttered, wiping his brow. That bastard always acted like he was done with all that military shit. Guess he didn't have a choice, another added, tossing a wrench between his hands. They're not calling up regular folks. Only the best. A few rolled their eyes. Yeah, Zeke's a goddamn legend, we get it. But the muttering didn't stop. Beneath the talk of Zeke's return to duty, there was something else lurking in the conversation. A nervous energy. Because everyone had heard the rumors, the odd occurrences, the fractures, the things that didn't make sense anymore. And now Ezekiel, one of the best problem solvers they had, was gone. Guess it ain't our problem, someone finally muttered, grabbing a length of piping and heading back to work. But the rest of them? They weren't so sure. Next chapter, Bethany's goodbye. The apartment was dim, lit only by the dull glow of the streetlights outside. Zeke's duffel sat half-packed on the bed, his old boots resting beside it. The place already felt like a ghost of itself. A knock. He knew who it was. When he opened the door, Bethany stood there. Her arms were crossed, but her eyes betrayed her. Red-rimmed, slightly swollen. She'd been crying. She stepped inside without waiting, without asking. Zeke shut the door behind her and turned. Didn't think you'd come. Bethany exhaled sharply, shaking her head. Yeah, well, Naomi called me. That made him pause. She saw it, the tension in his shoulders, the flicker of something unreadable in his face. She told me what's happening, Bethany said, voice tight but controlled. Told me some high-up agency is sending you out there to deal with. She hesitated. The red eyes. Zeke rolled his shoulders like he could shake off the weight of it. Yeah. Bethany just stared at him. Then suddenly, Zeke, do you even know what that thing is? He frowned. I know enough. Bethany let out a harsh, humorless laugh. Oh, do you? Because the way people talk about it, they're not just scared. They're terrified. He didn't answer. She sniffed, wiped at her cheek fast, like she could erase the evidence. She hated crying. But tonight she couldn't stop. She tried to lighten it. Tried to be Bethany, the cousin with the smirk, the sarcasm, the perfectly timed jab that always made things less heavy. But even as she spoke, her voice wavered. You know, I get it, Zeke. You've always got to be the guy who runs toward the danger. You always got to be the hero. But this? She shook her head. This isn't a fight. It's a goddamn nightmare. Zeke met her gaze, something in his expression hardening. Then I guess it's my job to wake up. Bethany inhaled sharply and closed her eyes for a moment. He had already made up his mind. There was no talking him out of it. A beat of silence. Then she stepped toward him. Without saying a word, she wrapped her arms around him. Zeke froze for half a second, then returned the hug. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't weak. It was the kind of hug that said, I love you and I don't want to lose you, and please come back all at once. When she pulled back, her hands lingered on his shoulders. Her eyes found his. And in them, Zeke saw something he hadn't expected. Not just fear, not just sadness, but love. Real, fierce, family love. The kind that begged him to live. Bethany smiled. It was forced, but it was there. For just a moment, it felt light again. Just a cousin and a cousin, sharing something that might be their last. Then she turned toward the door. She hesitated, looked back. Her voice softened. Zeke, just come back, okay? Zeke exhaled. I'll try. It wasn't a promise. It was all she was going to get. And with that, she left. Zeke didn't watch her go. He couldn't. Next chapter, the calm before the boom boom. Zeke adjusted the straps on the adaptive gear pack, feeling the weight of Cogwave shift slightly behind him. The prototype was still getting used to the configuration, or maybe just pretending to. Slight misalignment detected, adjusting by 0.02 degrees. Great, Zeke muttered, rolling his shoulders. Wouldn't want my spine to be slightly misaligned before fighting a giant murder machine. Proper posture is essential for battlefield performance, Cogwave replied in that perfectly calm, deeply unsettling voice of his. Yeah, tell that to my aching back. Across the staging area, a squad of steampunk soldiers stood ready, rifles slung over their shoulders, brass helmets gleaming in the rising sun. They were eyeing him warily. Zeke could almost hear what they were thinking. This is the guy? This is our secret weapon? One of them, a grizzled veteran, leaned over to a younger recruit. We're sending a construction worker and a fancy backpack to take down Red Eyes? That's it? No fleet? No airships? Just him? The younger soldier squinted at Cogwave. I mean, technically it's two guys. Zeke sighed and stretched his arms. Yeah, I hear you. He turned toward them, giving a lazy salute. I promise I'll try not to die in the first 5 minutes. The veteran raised an eyebrow. You trying might be the problem. Before Zeke could think of a comeback, a distant tremor rolled through the ground, low and slow, like something massive shifting just beneath the earth. The joking stopped. Cogwave's gears clicked. Seismic activity detected. Magnitude. Sufficient to warrant immediate action. Zeke exhaled sharply. Yeah, no kidding. A heartbeat passed. Then the war horns sounded. The battle was about to begin. Zeke barely had time to curse before the first wave hit. The ground split open like the jaws of some mechanical beast, spewing clockwork horrors into the battlefield. Gleaming brass spiders, each the size of a carriage, skittered onto the cobblestone streets, their serrated limbs clicking in unnatural rhythm. Their optical lenses glowed red like their monstrous creator, scanning the area before unleashing a storm of razor-thin wirewebs, snares designed to slice through flesh and tangle up anyone stupid enough to charge in. And then came the henchmen. At first glance, they looked human. Tall, imposing figures in tattered greatcoats and steel-plated masks. But as they moved, joints creaked unnaturally, and through the gaps in their clothing, Zeke saw the truth. Clockwork limbs, hydraulic pistons in place of muscle. They weren't men anymore. They were automatons, twisted mockeries of what had once been soldiers, workers, maybe even people. Cogwave's voice crackled over the chaos. Enemy forces detected hybrid combatants, combination of human neural remnants and machine control. Probability of coordinated assault, 94%. Zeke ducked just in time as a spider launched itself at him, serrated legs slashing through the air. He twisted, activating his adaptive gear pack. Cogwave responded instantly, his form shifting out of the pack's structure, extending a fluid-like arm into a glowing shield that absorbed the impact. Zeke staggered back, cursing. They got mini-bosses now? What, Red Eye's got a whole army hiding underground this whole time? Correction, Cogwave noted. It is likely Red Eyes is manufacturing new units in real time. Continuous threat escalation is inevitable. Zeke blew out a breath, shaking his head. Oh, fantastic. A 700-foot steampunk spider wasn't enough. Now he had to deal with a swarm of brass nightmares and an army of semi-conscious cyborg henchmen. This wasn't just an enemy. This was a goddamn factory of war. Zeke's boots skidded across the shattered cobblestone as a spider lunged, its metal fangs missing his face by inches. He ducked low, firing a blast of compressed steam from his wrist gauntlet, sending the thing flipping onto its back, legs twitching wildly. Zeke! Cogwave's voice cut through the static. We must reach the central control unit inside Red Eyes before reinforcements overwhelm us. Zeke gritted his teeth. Easier said than done. The battlefield was chaos. Clockwork spiders scuttled across broken rooftops, ambushing from above, while henchmen advanced in tight formation, flamethrowers igniting the air as they cut off every escape route. Red Eyes itself loomed over the carnage, its massive legs tearing through buildings, seismic tremors rattling the ground with every step. If they didn't end this fast, there'd be nothing left to save. Time to gamble. Zeke tapped the control pad on his wrist. All units, listen up. Focus fire on the minis. Keep 'em busy and clear a path to Red Eyes. I'm getting Cogwave into position. The remaining forces rallied. Artillery cannons fired volley after volley at the spiders, forcing them back. The henchmen moved to intercept, but Zeke was already in motion. Brace yourself, Cogwave warned. A glowing mechanical arm extended from Zeke's gear pack, grabbing onto a fallen metal beam and using it to launch them upward. He soared through the smoke-choked air, Cogwave's wave-like form extending from the backpack, morphing into tendrils that latched onto Red Eye's outer plating. Zeke landed hard, gripping onto a rusted ledge along the spider's armored back. They were in. Now came the real fight. Initiating integration sequence, Cogwave said as his form poured into the machine's systems, his energy flowing through the cracks, seeking the control core. Zeke drew his revolver, scanning his surroundings. Red Eyes wasn't going down without a fight. The deck plating beneath him began to shift. The damn thing was adapting. With a low, mechanical growl, hidden compartments opened and sentinel drones burst forth, gears grinding, weapons primed. Zeke exhaled sharply, cracking his knuckles as the first drone stepped forward. "All right, you big bastard." He leveled his gun. "Let's see what you got." Next chapter. Zeke wasn't about to play fair. As the Sentinel drones whirred to life, their red-lit optics scanning for movement, he reached into his gear pack and pulled out a pair of cylindrical grenades. The brass plating was still warm from being freshly primed. Steam breakers. "Hope you bastards like fog." He yanked the pins with his teeth and slammed the grenades against the deck. A high-pitched hiss followed, and thick, pressurized steam erupted outward, flooding the confined space in boiling mist. The drones panicked. Their targeting systems glitched, red beams sweeping blindly through the cloud as their joints hissed and sparked from the sudden moisture exposure. That was his window. Zeke flicked a switch on his auto-repeater, a prototype steam-powered rifle built for fast, near-endless suppression fire. It hummed to life, cogs spinning, pressure valves locking into place as the barrel chamber rotated like a Gatling gun. With a squeeze of the trigger, a burst of heated lead tore through the mist, ripping into the drones before they could recalibrate. 2 down. 3. A fourth exploded in a shower of sparks just as the mist began to thin. Zeke rolled forward, dodging an electrified lance that nearly took his head off, and kicked a downed drone out of his path. "Cogwave, tell me you're in." A pulse of blue energy rippled through Red Eye's core. Electric currents danced along the walls. "I am interfacing with the system now," Cogwave replied, his voice vibrating through the metal. "But the core has redundant protections. I require more time." Not what Zeke wanted to hear. A secondary turret unfolded from the ceiling and locked onto him. Oh, screw this. He pulled his last weapon, a steam lance. The coil along its length heated instantly, steam vents hissing along its ridges. One solid charge, and it could punch through metal like butter. Zeke gritted his teeth, lowered his stance, and lunged. The turret fired. Zeke swung, and the fight raged on. As Zeke twisted mid-air, the steam lance glowing white-hot, he drove it straight into the turret's housing. The impact sent a shockwave through the metal. Sparks erupted, circuits blew. The turret jerked, whined, and collapsed inward, hissing as its power core fizzled out. "One problem down," he muttered, landing hard. But Red Eyes wasn't done yet. The floor beneath him began to rumble. At first, Zeke thought it was just the machine reacting to the sabotage, until he saw them. Clockwork limbs unfolded from the walls, red optics blinking to life like swarms of fireflies. The minis, 100 tiny arachnid-like drones, poured out of vents, their delicate brass legs skittering in perfect unison. Unlike the larger units, these were faster, meaner, precise. They leapt. Zeke barely had time to react. He slammed his boot into one mid-air, sent it spiraling into a wall, but the rest swarmed, latching onto his arms, legs, chest, digging in with razor-thin pincers. "I hate this," he growled, shaking them off. Steam hissed from his exosuit's vents as he overloaded the pressure reserves. In a violent burst, hot vapor exploded outward, blasting dozens of the little bastards away. "Cogwave, buddy, I could use a damn miracle right about now." The blue energy flowing through Red Eye's core pulsed, harder, brighter. A deep hum vibrated through the chamber. Then something changed. One by one, the clockwork spiders froze. Their red optics dimmed. Their twitching legs locked. And then they turned. "Control. Acquired." Cogwave's voice echoed. "Rewriting subroutines." Zeke blinked, panting. "Wait, you flipped him?" The spiders clicked in eerie unison. Then, as one, they swiveled toward the still-active turrets and remaining enemy drones, and attacked. Zeke let out a full, breathless laugh, half madness, half triumph, as the enemy was suddenly overwhelmed by its own creations. "You crazy brass bastard!" he shouted, grinning as he reloaded his auto-repeater. "All right then, let's clean house." The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, they had the advantage, and Zeke was about to use it. Zeke barely had time to breathe before the battlefield shifted again. The swarm of hacked mini-spiders lunged at the remaining defense systems, crawling up turrets, jamming gears with their tiny mechanical bodies, disrupting targeting relays. But Red Eyes wasn't done. A new sound filled the air, a grinding, churning roar, like gears protesting their own destruction. Zeke turned. Massive panels slid open along Red Eye's back. Steam billowed out, thick and hissing, as 2 enormous mechanical arms unfolded, one ending in a serrated industrial saw, the other a 6-barrel rotary cannon. "That's excessive," Zeke muttered. "That's deeply excessive." Then it fired. The rotary cannon spun up instantly, vomiting a stream of red-hot lead that tore through its own compromised defenses, shredding hacked spiders into shrapnel. The tide turned again. "We're running out of time," Zeke barked. Cogwave's voice hummed through his earpiece. "I require a direct path to the control core. Create an opportunity, and I will neutralize it." "Sure. Just let me fight a 700-foot war machine by myself for a bit." But then an idea, a terrible, reckless Zeke-style idea. "If I can get close, how fast can you do your thing?" Zeke asked, already moving. "Less than 15 seconds. That's all I need." He ran straight toward Red Eyes. The machine reacted immediately. The saw arm swung down, screeching through the air like a reaper's blade. Zeke slid under it, sparks raining as it cleaved into the steel where he'd just been. Then came the cannon. Zeke vaulted onto a broken support beam, then leapt, boots catching the edge of a falling walkway. The cannon fired, missing him by inches as he rolled hard and came up just beneath Red Eyes' central core plating. "Now, Cogwave!" The gear pack on Zeke's back shifted. Gears spun, metal unfolded. Cogwave launched forward, his gear-shifting mechanical form pouring like quicksilver up Red Eye's plating and sinking into its core casing. The machine spasmed. Alarms blared deep within Red Eyes. Its head jerked, limbs twitched, caught between two warring intelligences. "Security firewall engaged," Cogwave reported, attempting to... Then came the screech. A high-pitched mechanical wail tore across the battlefield, vibrating through bone and steel alike. The remaining turrets swiveled, locking onto Zeke. The saw arm lashed. The cannon locked center mass. He was out of moves. "Cogwave, I really need you to pull through, buddy." The machine buckled. Then everything froze. The red glow in Red Eye's optics snapped to black. The cannon spun down. The saw arm dropped limp. Silence. "Control system neutralized," Cogwave said. Zeke blinked. "Oh shit, did we just win?" A beat passed. Then Red Eyes tipped forward. Its legs buckled. Nope, bad." Zeke sprinted as the massive war machine collapsed, its weight screaming against the earth, crushing everything in its path. He barely cleared the impact zone, throwing himself behind a stack of debris as a deafening shockwave blasted outward. Then silence. It was over. Zeke lay on his back, staring up at the smog-filled sky, chest heaving, ears ringing. Then he chuckled. Then he laughed. A deep, exhausted, slightly unhinged laugh that echoed off the broken steel around him. "I can't believe that actually worked." Cogwave's voice hummed in his earpiece, as calm as ever. "Victory achieved." Zeke groaned, lifting a shaky hand to wipe soot from his face. "Yeah, sure, let's go with that." Final chapter. Snow. The walk back to Admiral Trenholm's office felt longer than it should have. Maybe it was the crash after the adrenaline. Maybe it was the fact that Zeke had nearly been turned into scrap metal by a giant murder spider. Or maybe it was Cogwave. The adaptive gear pack on his back had gone eerily silent since the battle. Zeke nudged it. "You still in there, metalhead?" Cogwave's voice hummed to life. "Affirmative. I am processing new data." Red Eyes exhibited unpredictable adaptations. Yeah, that sucked," Zeke muttered. They stepped into the office. Trenholm was already waiting. He stood hunched over the hollow table, studying fracture maps like he could will them to make sense. Red lines pulsed like veins beneath the surface. He didn't look up. "We have no time to lose. I have more intel to go over," Zeke scoffed, collapsing into the chair across from him. "You do know I almost lost my head out there, right?" Trenholm spared him a glance. Barely. "It's a good thing you still have it. You'll need it." Zeke blinked. "Right. Good to know you care." Next to him, Cogwave tilted his head, gears clicking softly. "Statement appears contradictory," the machine noted. "If Commander Watts had lost his head, he would be incapable of utilizing it further. The phrase implies concern, yet Admiral Trenholm's tone does not reflect—" Zeke waved him off. "Don't overthink it, Gears for Brains. That was dry humor." Cogwave's optics pulsed faintly. "Understood." Adjusting parameters for sarcasm detection. Trenholm pinched the bridge of his nose. "I swear, between the two of you, I might actually lose my head." "Well," Zeke said with a smirk, "it's a good thing you still have it. You'll need it." Trenholm shot him a look that could have melted iron. Zeke just grinned. Then the mood shifted. Trenholm exhaled, tapping the hollow table. The lights dimmed as the map expanded, glowing red fractures pulsing like a slow infection across the regions. "Enough stalling," he said. "We have a problem, and we may have found our solution." He slid a file across the desk. Zeke caught it mid-slide, flipped it open, and froze. A name, a photo, a woman who shouldn't exist. Snow. The Admiral pulled up a holographic projection of a world map. Red fractures pulsed across the terrain, jagged, unnatural lines cutting through continents like wounds. Cracks in the very fabric of reality. 99.9% of people who come into contact with a fracture die instantly, Trenholm said, his tone grim. Disintegrated, torn apart, shifted into places we don't understand. He gestured to the folder on the table. Snow is the 0.1%, the only known case of someone surviving direct exposure. Zeke flipped the folder open again, scanning the contents with growing unease. Strange anomalies were logged across every page. Vital signs fluctuate unpredictably. Time perception inconsistent. Subject claims to see past and future moments simultaneously. Fragments of subject's body exist out of phase with reality. Then he reached the final page. One line stood out. Subject exhibits ability to stabilize and repair fractures. Zeke's grip on the folder tightened. You're telling me she can fix this mess? Trenholm nodded once. Not completely. Not yet. But she's the only lead we've got. Thank you for watching and listening to the Steampunk Years Volume 2. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Volume 3 is already in motion with new faces, deeper mysteries, and even higher stakes as the fractures between worlds begin to tear everything apart. Drop a comment below and let me know your favorite moment, theory, or character. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next chapter.
Winds whisper, shadows creep, 1,000 years, secrets to keep. The blimp ascends through the smoky air, a city below, unaware. A tower shrouded by mist. She speaks of truths we can't dismiss. Be prepared, the gears will grind, a force unleashed, a shattered mind. The old world stirs, its secrets awake, the fractures widen, the realm will quake. A name unspoken, a face concealed, the locks undone, the past revealed. 1,000 years of restless I've strive, the machine's whispers now ignite life. Be prepared, the gears will grind, a force unleashed, a shattered mind. The old world stirs, its secrets awake, the fractures widen, the realm will quake. Follow the fractures where shadows crawl. Seek the truth before the fall. But tread with care, the risks are steep, the answers wait where silence weeps. Be prepared, the gears will grind, a force unleashed, a shattered mind. The old world stirs, its secrets awake, the fractures widen, the realm will quake. The blimp descends, her voice remains, an echo of warnings and shifting chains. A glimpse of truth, a spark of fear, the prophet's words ring sharp and clear.